webinar is Michigan Speaks Frontline Communities on Lead and Water. And just for a brief overview, lead is a neurotoxin. There is no safe level for lead. It's been used for thousands of years. Actually, the word lead and plumbing comes from plumbum, which is Latin. It's currently used in lead pipes, brass fixtures, solder, galvanized steel, bullets, and lead acid car batteries. Historically, it was also in gasoline and paint. Before the Flint water crisis, common sources of lead exposure was believed to be from soil, dust, and paint. And so like this is basically like what a lead service line is. So you have like the blue little circle is a water main, and then you have a lead service line coming from the connector and going into your house. And in 2018, Michigan passed the lead and copper rule, which is under the Safe Drinking Water Act, and it required an inventory of all lead service lines, full lead service line replacement of lead and galvanized steel attached to lead service lines at no cost to the homeowner. It lowered the action level from 15 parts per billion to 12 parts per billion. It also created new sampling and notification requirements. And it also called for the creation of state and local water system advisory councils. What's wrong with this? There is no safe level for lead. Like every medical association says that there is no safe level for lead. Water systems are using bonds and loans to pay for lead service line replacement. This infrastructure debt will be passed on to water customers, which will lead to unaffordable water bills, water shutoffs, and property tax liens. And there has also been uneven implementation around this. And one of the reasons, like there are communities across the country that are dealing with lead in their water. But what's unique of what happened in Michigan is all of these communities that are dealing with this also have a history of Michigan's proto-fascist and undemocratic emergency manager law. We had this state takeover, and just for educational purposes, an emergency manager can sell off public assets, they can change union contracts, they could apply for bankruptcy or even dissolve a municipality. There is no municipality currently under receivership, but we are all dealing with the legacy of the emergency manager. The loss of democracy in the communities that you're going to hear testimony from caused unaffordable water, attempted privatization of water, and poison water. And these communities became democracy sacrifice zones that also had other environmental justice issues, like as far as like causing like asthma and brownfields and dirty polluters. Now you're gonna hear from 4 amazing panelists that are gonna give their testimony. The first person is Claire McClinton from Flint, Michigan. And Claire is from the Flint Democracy Defense League. She is a retiree from General Motors who proudly served positions at UAW Local 659 in Flint, Michigan. Born and raised in Flint, she has been in the forefront of the city's fight for water as a human right, free of lead and other toxins with the Democracy Defense League. She regularly discusses Flint's water crisis and the poisoning as a direct result of the dictatorial emergency manager switching the city's water supply to the Flint River in 2014. The floor is yours, Claire.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank the People's Tribune for organizing this event. And the People's Tribune is a paper that has been near and dear to those of us water warriors that's been in the fight about this water disaster in Flint. So we really want to appreciate that. And a lot of journalists and media came and went when you didn't have the flashy stories, but the People's Tribune stayed with us in the trenches, and so I want to thank them for that. And I want to open up by saying that this past December, Markets Insider magazine published a headline that should be a cautionary alarm for all of us involved with water fights. And that headline stated, quote, "Water futures set to join likes of gold and oil and trade on Wall Street for a first time ever," end quote. I'm going to repeat that. Water futures set to join likes of gold and oil and trade on Wall Street for the first time ever, end quote. So this headline and the maneuvers of the bondholders and private equity firm has been a clarion call to let us know that they will not be retreating from seizing ownership and control of public water. This should inform us and caution us as we go forward in our fights to just get a glass of clean water. So I send you greetings from the occupied and poison city of Flint, Michigan. And in order to, there's so much that can be discussed about this fight, but I just want to condense it down into what we call unfinished business. We just had our 7th year commemoration this past Sunday, where we were able to come together and kind of collaborate. We hadn't seen each other, many of us, for over a year due to the COVID situation. And so it was a wonderful gathering, and we talked about our issues, and we also decided what our next steps would be. And so I'll talk about that a little later. But the theme of that event this year is called Unfinished Business. And unfinished business entails the following. We, from the beginning, the 7 years, have had a program of demands to lay a down payment on restorative justice for the residents and the impacted residents of Flint. The first demand is this. We demanded that they abolish the emergency manager law. And you've heard a little bit about that so far, the outright seizure of municipal and school districts by dispatching a manager from the governor's office into our cities and school districts to seize control of our democracy. And that was one of our demands, but what did we get? Instead of abolishing the emergency manager law, which should have been done immediately once the crisis was exposed here in Flint, instead, what we got is we got saddled with bond debt. We got saddled with bond debt. That was the answer to the emergency manager, and that was the purpose of the emergency manager, is to seize the public assets, the number one being water. Our next demand was that we wanted clean water. But what did we get? We got service line replacement, but as one of the water warriors suggested, the pipe replacement was like someone drinking dirty water with a clean straw. So we've got a lot to do with our infrastructure, our water mains, and we still have 500 residents who have not had their lead lines replaced, their service lines replaced. Our next demand was accessible, affordable water. What did we get? We paid among the highest, we're number 1 or 2, highest water rates in the nation. Our next demand was we wanted education. because recent studies have showed that Flint children, the special education rate rose 57%. And this was a consequence of the lead water, the behavior issues, the social maladjustments, and their educational intellectual capacities was highly compromised. And we have demanded that they do wraparound services and provide our children with things they need to cope with the situation. We have not got any of that yet. That issue has been ignored. And last but not least, we've demanded Medicare for all. What did we get? We got a temporary expansion of Medicaid, but we have no guarantees that our medical needs will be met now and in the future. And some of you may or may not know that lead poisoning is generational, so that our children's children may be impacted by the poisoning from the lead. Now, I'm just going to close with this water settlement, this so-called big water settlement, the $600 million that the Attorney General Nessel was bragging that they had settled with residents of Flint. But the problem is that there are so many barriers and hurdles to accessing compensation until there may be hundreds, if not thousands, of residents and their children who don't get a dime because of the documentation you have to have, when we know that during the heights of the water crises, doctors refuse to acknowledge that the water caused the problems. If it could have been anything from hair loss and skin rashes to outright poisoning, but they refuse to acknowledge that. So you do not have a documentation for the most part. Some do, but very few have the documentation in order to file a claim to get compensation. So one of these things we came up with and that we're launching right now in Flint is that we're starting a campaign for water affordability. We are seeking to get enough signatures to put on the ballot for water affordability based on the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania model and the Baltimore, Maryland model, where your income determines the cost of your water bill, not usage. And the other initiative that we're launching is the seeking a referendum to put in our local law that no one can be denied water. In other words, we're going to abolish the shutoffs. And I just want to say that the work that, especially in Detroit, had did to force the hand of the governor to suspend water shutoffs and to turn on water in all occupied residencies was the work of the grassroots. And so I'm just going to end it there and to say that we know that we live in a capitalist society. We need to understand that we're in a capitalist society, and he who got the capital rules. And as we go forward to make this restorative justice as it relates to environment and water, which is life, that we will win, and we have a lot of hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you very much, Claire, for that powerful testimony and report out of what's happening in Flint. And this past Sunday was the 7th year anniversary since of the switch, and the resource guide that attendees will be receiving later, like you'll have a copy of the open letter that went out to elected officials. Next up, we have Reverend Edward Pigney. from Benton Harbor, Michigan. Reverend Edward Pinckney is a community leader with decades in the fight for the impoverished, primarily Black town of Benton Harbor. He was falsely imprisoned for voter fraud in an election that sought to remove officials who allied with Whirlpool, the corporation that dominates the town and who sought to force the poor out as part of their redevelopment plans. Reverend Pinckney was later exonerated by the Michigan Supreme Court and continues the fight for clean water and all that the community need. Reverend Pinckney, you have the floor.
Naraya, thank you so much for those kind words. And I just want to say to the People Tribune, I really appreciate you guys. I know Benton Harbor is a very small city. It's 70 miles from Chicago. It's 180 miles from Detroit, 45 miles from South Bend, and 80 miles from Grand Rapids. And it probably was the best kept secret when it comes to water that there was, because nobody really knew or really cared about the city of Benton Harbor. Even the elected officials never cared about the city of Benton Harbor. They only cared about what they could get from Whirlpool Corporation. And I want to thank the People Tribune for taking that giant step forward and actually really putting Benton Harbor on the map. And also I want to thank Flint, Bishop, Clara, Naraya, and all the other ones that set forth and made this happen. Because Benton Harbor, we would never be talking about water today if it wasn't for Flint, Michigan. We wouldn't be talking about it, because it was the best kept secret in the city of Benton Harbor. They knew that the water was bad in the city of Benton Harbor in 2010. They knew it was undrinkable, but that was under the emergency manager. They didn't care about that. Nobody ever cared about what was happening to the residents of Benton Harbor, because most of it was a secret. They didn't never care until this one young man, probably 10 or 11 years old, he got sick, and they took his lead level and discovered that he had more lead in his body than 10 people would have had. And eventually he died. But they didn't say he died from the water. They didn't say he died from lead. They just said he died. But this is how the Benton Harbor Community Water Council was formed. My good friend, Emma Kennard, her water was yellow. Like Clara said earlier about gold. She thought that she had struck gold because the water was so yellow. And she called me and said, well, we need to do something about this. So we went and got 2 pints of water and took them to City Hall and gave them to the mayor. And we left them with him, and he refused to have them tested. After he refused to have them tested, we decided to form the Benton Harbor Community Water Council. We went to work. We went out and got 75 sample water testers and sent it to the University of Michigan Biological Lab. And they discovered that the water was undrinkable. Let me tell you about the school system. Our school system, when you talk about ppb, parts per billion, they had 650 ppbs per billion. And nobody talked about it. So they said that we just found a faucet that was that haven't been used. So we went back and tested again, and it was over 350 ppbs. They didn't have an explanation for that, and that was the one that been used regularly by our children who've been drinking that water. Nobody really cared about stuff like this, especially in the city of Benton Harbor, because Whirlpool didn't want nobody to know that the water was bad, because they was trying to sell these homes around this Jack Nicklaus signature golf course. The only thing they cared about was selling them homes. And it never ever made the newspaper until once they discovered Eagle came out and made an announcement that every single resident in Benton Harbor had to have a water filter. And we all know that the water filter is just a bandage. It's that you put, it was a bullet hole. That's what you put you have everybody to take to get a water filter. So they started passing out water filters, and we helped them. See, what we did, we made sure that every single resident had one. We organized ourselves and put ourselves in a position to make sure that people had water filters. And we not only gave them a water filter, but we put it on. We made sure, because there are some people, even the older people, who are not able to put it on, which was a gigantic thing. Now, this shook up our city council. And I got to say this, we have 9 Black elected officials who didn't care about the community. Right after Eagle made that announcement, they called the press conference, the mayor did. The mayor made the announcement that the water was good to drink. It was good to bathe in. It was good to brush your teeth. He made that even though they knew that the water was bad. He made the statement that he don't know nobody who have died from the water in Benton Harbor. That was the worst thing that a person who's in an authoritative position could ever say to a community. What he's saying is it's okay that you're sick. We don't care about you being sick. We don't care that you have it's destroying your inside. We don't care what it's doing to your kidneys. We don't care what it might do to the next generation. Nobody have died. Nobody. And he was bragging about it like it was something big. And we used to support this guy. Matter of fact, he's the reason why I went to prison. I did a recall to get the previous mayor out so we could put this guy in so he could take care of the community. And he rubbed our face in it. He showed us money talks. He showed us that he was a supporter of Whirlpool Corporation, a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But in his insight, it was all right. But here's what the Benton Harbor Community Water Council did. We start going door to door, knocking on people's doors, testing their water to make sure the water was getting better. Eagle came in, they did good, but they could do better. A lot of times people don't understand the power of lead. Lead will eat your insides out and destroy your brain, especially the young kids and the senior citizens. But they didn't care about stuff like that. But we do. The Benton Harbor Community Water Council, we do. We went to work. We made sure that people knew, and we educated them about the lead and copper rule, which is crucial. You need to understand about these things because this is where we're at. And by doing this, they had tripled the water bills for the residents in Benton Harbor. The only thing that has been good, that they can't cut their water off. Because if they had the power to cut the water off, everybody just about in Benton Harbor will have their water cut off right now. But we're working on it. We see things that we can do. Right now, we're passing out water twice a month to as many residents of Benton Harbor as we can. We also, if you're a senior citizen and you cannot come and get the water, we will bring it to your door. We understand the power of water. We understand bad water will kill you. If it don't kill you today, it might get you tomorrow. But I want people to know before I close, because it's crucial to understand, learn the lead and copper rule. It's crucial that you know this. They said 15 ppbs is okay, but it should be 0 ppbs. You shouldn't have 1 drop of lead in your drinking water. for any reason, you should not have a drop of lead in your water. Lead will eat your brain up. It will destroy your kidneys, your intestines, your stomach. It will destroy you. If it don't get you, it might just get the next generation. So we have to be aware of that. When we talk about lead poisoning, it exists. You can keep it a secret if you want to. I'm not mad at you, but it's real. This is real. Lead poisoning is going on today. And I just want to thank Flint. If Flint had not stood up and fought the way they did, and Detroit too, they've all been part of it. But if y'all had not done it, many, many more people will be dead today. And I just want to thank y'all for that. Thank you so much for allowing me to just tell the world about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Reverend Pinckney. And I saw that the parts per billion, the PPB, was answered in the chat. And thank you also for highlighting the fact that we have these standards and they're really all made up because they should be based on public health. There's no doctor signing off on any of that stuff with these standards of parts per billion because there's not a difference between 15 parts per billion or 12 parts per billion because it's basically the difference between dying today and dying like 3 days from now. It's not going to make too much of a difference. You're still gonna die.
And remember, our mayor said that he don't know nobody who have died from lead. What kind of statement is that to make?
No, that's like absolutely terrible. That's absolutely insane and not based in any sort of empathy or humanity at all. So next we have Miss Gracie Wooten from Highland Park. Gracie Wooten is a retired Detroit public school teacher who lived in Highland Park for over 40 years. She is a former member of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. She is currently member of Highland Park Human Rights Coalition, Solidarity, and the General Baker Institute. Ms. Gracie Wooten, you have the floor.
Thank you for this opportunity. In July of 2019, it was announced that Highland Park, as a result of the Michigan lead and copper rule, which was more stringent than the past standards, Highland Park was the level of lead made Highland Park part of action. It had an action level. And just like Reverend Pinckney was talking about, like one of the houses that was tested, it tested at over 610 parts per billion. And the good thing about the Michigan lead and copper rule, the revisions, was that more houses were tested. You know, the standards were more stringent than the testing that was done before. Before there was only they were only required to test like 3 houses in a community, which you know, a community like Highland Park, you know that whatever you get, whatever results you get are going to be not correct, because a Highland Park, you know, is so the city is old and the infrastructure is very old. Just like the other panel members, Highland Park, you know, has suffered under the financial managers, and not only that, Highland Park being a auto town, you know, being you know, an auto town, it suffered from the disinvestment in the auto industry, you know. So Henry Ford came to Highland Park in the 1900s. Highland Park's had about 400 people. When he opened up the plant, there were over 4,000. When the water plant was open, it was open in about 1914, and Highland Park was still a village. You know, Highland Park didn't become a city until 1918. Ford ran away from Detroit because, you know, and businesses that were located in Highland Park were running away from Detroit because Detroit had taxes that they didn't want to pay, you know, and people, these corporations have been doing the same thing for generations. You know, they've been running from one city to another to try to increase their production and, you know, figure out ways they can get more profit. So Highland Park was, by the time 1930, when Henry Ford, he left Highland Park in 1929 and moved to Rouge, you know, where he could develop his car from the beginning to the end. He was only in Highland Park for about, let's say, 20 years before he started that disinvestment in Highland Park. He left, by 1945, he was, you know, Highland Park, he was just making, making tractors. Chrysler came in about 25, and what they did was produce 2 cars, and they were making moves to get out just like Ford, you know, because they wanted more property and they wanted to expand their company. Now, by the time when Chrysler finally left, you know, Highland Park had given Chrysler in the 60s more land to for their headquarters. They had given them money to expand Oakland Avenue. They gave Chrysler so much, the city did. And it was all on the back of the people, you know, by increasing our taxes and by not only that, selling off things that we needed. I mean, or closing them down. You know, the city was giving Chrysler all this money, and the newspaper closed down, the hospitals closed down, the junior college closed down, you know, and so when, but Chrysler, they did leave, and, you know, the tax base of the city went to, I think they left, about 5,000 people left with them, employees, and it bankrupted the city's, you know, what the city could afford to do. You know, they weren't getting any taxes. So you had this huge disinvestment in Highland Park, and it was going on for years. When Henry Ford, like I said, when he came, there was 400 people in that village. And in the 30s, when Henry Ford left, there were about 52,000 people. And by the time Chrysler left in 91, there were about 20,000 people. So we're talking about a huge disinvestment. And when, let's see, Chrysler left maybe in 92. So what happened was by 95, the state was looking at Highland Park's, you know, books. Highland Park didn't have any money. And by 2000, we had our first emergency manager. And the emergency manager, of course, started trying to, you know, anti-union. So the unions were dissolved, the city unions. The police department was closed, you know, farmed out to the state, you know, to patrol the cities. All the, you know, just building after building was closed down, and she tried to sell or privatize the water department. Now, the Human Rights Coalition was established around that time because our water bills, what she did too, the emergency manager, you know, she wanted to, she started billing people, making sure that bills were collected. And so about 50% of the people in the city couldn't pay their water bill. So, you had this constant, assault on citizens because of the emergency manager. Highland Park was under emergency manager for 9 years. That was more than any other city in Michigan. In fact, after that emergency, after 2009, Highland Park was about to get another emergency manager. So Highland Park ended up getting a city administrator. Like right now, we have a city administrator who came into Highland Park in 2014. Okay, so we're still suffering from this emergency manager. We suffer from disinvestment. We suffer from emergency managers, and all this time when we had an emergency manager, nothing was being fixed. In terms of our city infrastructure, it was being, it was rotting. You didn't have any repairs done on at the water department. The water department, like I said, was built around 1914. And by 1912, when the mayor, he jumped the gun and shut that water department down. He shut it down when it needed a repair. At the same time in Ann Arbor, they needed a repair on their water department. Governor Snyder fixed their water department. He repaired it. They at like it was over $100 million, but he would not repair Highland Parks. So we don't have, we had the water department shut. And when right now, we have problems not only with the service lines, but we have problems with the water mains also. The water mains keep breaking because Highland Park was never meant to be joined to Detroit for so long. It was only supposed to be for an emergency situation until the pipes the water department could be repaired, and the pipes would not be associated with Detroit's water for that long. So what happens in Highland Park is, we continuously have water main breaks. The EPA has allowed Highland Park to fix those breaks, even though they know that, there's contamination because the whole line isn't being replaced. Now, here we are, we're supposed to not only fix the water main, all of those pipes, we're supposed to fix the service lines also, yet we don't have the money. So what happens is, a whole lot of money is being borrowed, and we're gonna be saddled with paying for it, and like Highland Park, our population is down to less than 11,000. We have the water department, they have about 2,400 water customers, yet we're supposed to pay these millions of dollars that are being borrowed in order to fix the infrastructure. So as I said from the beginning, like everyone knew that Highland Park, with the lead and copper rule, Highland Park everybody knew that Highland Park had a lead problem because of our ancient system. Those, those pipes are old, they're about 100 years old, and all the service lines, there's estimated that 80% of those are lead. So, it's just, it's just criminal, what's being done to us. And there's no way, that citizens should be allowed to have all this weight, in terms of financial burdens put on us. Now, before I close, I just want to say that, with the Human Rights Coalition, there's a great article that was done, and it's in the February 2006 edition of the People's Tribune. It's an article by General Baker and Miriam Kramer, and it describes, the whole situation about the takeover and all the what was being all the abuse that was happening with the emergency managers. And one of the things too I want to say before I leave is that as a result of the work that the original Highland Park Human Rights Coalition did, Highland Park, we do have a water affordability plan. And there was a lawsuit that was brought against the city based on these horribly high water bills, and the case was finally settled in last year. And one of the things that was settled was the fact that the water department had to offer a water plan, rate plan for homeowners that couldn't pay the bill. You can't just wait until somebody's in trouble. People have the ability now to work out a plan before they have problems with paying the water bill. So you can look at the agreement that was reached with the water department. It's on the Highland Park's Human Rights Coalition's website. That website is highlandparkhrc.org. And that affordability plan is in there. And also the lawsuit, that is in there also. So at least that happened, but still, people, we just have too much debt. We're not able to afford what's being asked of us. And we already know, like I said, that there's we already knew that in terms of a lead and copper rule, that there was no way Highland Park was going to not have high levels of lead in the water, and the soil. We are surrounded by industry, and and our pipes, all of them are they're like 100 years old. You even have wood pipes in Highland Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gracie, for that powerful history of Highland Park and testimonies and the victories that you have achieved over the years. Now, I wanted to share that before our last speaker comes on, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And then also, they're in the resource guide. I know I keep on hyping this up, but there are several articles focusing on the different communities and the victories and the struggles that they were working with and for victories around water affordability, around lead in water, and the loss of democracy in all four of these communities. Our final speaker.
Before the final speaker comes, can I just tell you that Highland Park also has the children in Highland Park, they have the highest lead. They've been identified as having the highest lead than any city in Michigan. Their lead levels are 14%. And we already know that's irreversible. Lead poisoning is irreversible, as the speakers have already said. And I don't know how I forgot to mention the children, because that's our future.
Most definitely. Our final speaker before we get into Q&A is Rosalind Walker from Detroit. Rosalind Walker was born January 20th, 1966 in Eloise, Michigan. Raised in Detroit, Michigan, she is a product of the Detroit public school systems and attended Mary Grove College. Her decades of work includes working for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, formerly the Department of Social Services. Later on, she continued her passion to help the community by being a member of multiple organizations, including Moses, the People's Water Board, Michigan Legal Services, and a board member of Beware, a battered women's shelter. What keeps her going? I love children and elderly people who need help in every area I could exist in. Rosalind Walker, you have the floor.
Hello, how you doing? Hi, everyone. Well, we didn't heard each and every one talk about this lead and the infrastructure, so I'm gonna get right to the point. There's like over 80,000 lead service lines in the city of Detroit. The Water Department of Department of Water estimates, saying that that's how many there are, but it could be more or it could be less. But they are servicing water to these homes that were built back in the 1945s. Detroit Water and Sewage Department came up with a water upgrade, which they were going to be replacing the lead piping and doing the water main lines and the sewer lines and everything. So with that happening, the cost was going to be on the residents. Their rates kept going up and up, which meaning their water bills went up. So after their water bills went up, they still was installing this water main replacement, as they call it, and sewer main replacements. They were installing plastic zip lines, which I would actually explain, saying like, if you gotta have a plastic zip liner, those like a freezer bag, they're gonna be installing those in the pipes. So they're not basically replacing them, they're filling them with these zip liners. And with them doing that, they're shaking up these, pipes and all this different dirt. And then you got the lines from the house, and then you have the lead faucets in the house. So the residents have to pay for those things to be done. And they also had like replaced these the pipings for the water service to go into your homes with these blue water hoses. I had some pictures, slides that I was going to show, and it's just like ever since 2011, we've been battling, probably before that. And I know we've been battling a long time with lead pipings, and when, like they say, lead is dangerous and you shouldn't have to drink no lead. And then they also gave the residents some pitchers to drink out of. And with these filters that wasn't, the filters wasn't certified, put it like that. They wasn't certified, they wasn't standard filters, and they only gave the people one in one pitcher. So with that being said, we look at all this infrastructure, and then everything is going to reflect on the residents. So what I did was I got me some flyers. I went to go knocking on door to door to tell these people here, do y'all see these marks on the streets where they marking, where they're going to be digging? They giving you all pictures. They didn't tell you guys have lead piping, or that's what we are going to be fixing. You had to find that out for yourself. So that's where I came in at, to let these residents in the community be educated. I educated them on what I could, and from there we've been out ever since 2010, 11, 12, all the way. It's 2021 now, and we here in the pandemic with coronavirus, and they got a plan where you pay $25 towards your water bill if you can't pay the whole water bill. But you look at it, if they're getting loans to pay for all this infrastructure and fixing these pipes, and the residents have to pay for it, they're going up on our rates which is our water bills. So we still losing out. So when you look at it, we still need a water affordability plan, which we have came up with one. They still overlooked that for many years. Then you have Snyder did whatever he did when he came up with the act. Then you had the emergency manager come in with their law. They took over. No one is helping the residents at all. We study just getting billed and study have to drink, buy bottled water actually to be able to live, because no one wants to drink contaminated water. That's what I call it. You call it lead water drinking, I call it contaminated water. And if anything is contaminated, it's subject to kill. And I just want everybody in the whole United States and the world, in the city of Detroit, in the state of Michigan, to know that we are whole. And one good thing about it, we know that we have Great Lakes. Water is here. So what we need to do now is grab a hold and make these people and these corporate people pay for what they're doing to our system. And when you have infrastructure that's been towed up for over probably more than 100 years, as she said, you know, Highland Park, you have Detroit, you see them digging up pipes and you look and you say, well, this pipe, they have a date on it. The pipe might have 1920 on it. I'm 55 years old. If you didn't fix it in all this time, which everything get old, everything wear out, and they're still not really fixing it or replacing it, they're putting these zip liners inside of the lead pipes. So then, like I said, the people have to worry about the lead pipes that's going to their homes and the faucets. So that's what we need to really stand up for and work for. And I just want everybody to know that that's what I'm going to keep fighting for. And thank you so much, Tribute, for having me.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
your powerful testimony, Rosalind.
Thank you.
So we do have, before I turn it over to the wonderful and incomparable fellow water warrior and community activist, Bishop Bernadette Jefferson, I just wanted to share very briefly the call to action for this particular panel is at the federal level, the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, will be hosting a Lead and Copper Rule Revision listening session May the 5th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And you will get a link to this in the resource guide that we will put in the chat a little bit later. But I just wanted to share that once you register, you will get, you choose like 3 2-hour windows and you will have 3 minutes to speak. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Bishop Bernadette Jefferson, who will be moderating the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Naira. Thank everyone for their information and speaking out. And one thing that I have noticed, our common denominator here in Michigan, on everyone where that we have went, that together we win, and that we have to talk about what's going on in our city and our state, what's going on, not only what's going on, but what are we doing to bring change here? And I seen one of the questions was to talk more about the lawsuit in Flint, Michigan. So if Claire is still on, and Nair and I will talk with you, Claire, but would you expound on that?
Well, at first blush, the $600 million that the state bragged about, we knew, and we spoke out and we had press conferences that that was not enough. We knew that wasn't enough money. And from there, it was downhill with the water settlement, because again, as I mentioned earlier, all of the prohibitive documentation that you needed, that there's a scandal with respect to the amount of money the attorneys are getting. They're asking for a third, which would reduce it down to 400 million. They have not made available tests. One of the parts of the lawsuit is based on, for children, is based on taking a test, an NEC test, in which,
Neuropsych evaluation.
thank you, in which you can determine the needs of children, and that would also in turn determine their amount of compensation, but this test is not available. The lead test is not available because one thing, we've learned some things about lead we didn't even want to really know. And one of those things is that once you take a blood test, after 30 days, if you discontinue drinking the dirty water, then the lead dissipates out your blood system and goes into other organs, including the bones. So right now, there's only 3 facilities in the nation who can do the bone test to determine the amount of lead in your system. We have no such facility here in Michigan, but some of the attorneys came up with a scheme to test for bone lead in adults and children with a portable industrial piece of equipment that they would zap into your leg and determine how much lead you had. Well, it comes to find out that that particular test is not even designated for human beings. That piece of equipment is used to determine the amount of lead in toys, is for industrial use, and they're using it on our people. So this is just the Flint water settlement has so many loopholes and so many, and the other thing about the settlement, we were so insulted with the provisions of the settlement, and when these things come up, it re-traumatizes the community. It brings back memories of the experiences that you had with this water. And so that's just some of the things that is, and so the things I mentioned, and then I'll let Naira and Bishop, the things I mentioned, abolishing emergency manager, clean water, affordable water, Medicare for all, and education, none of that is in the water settlement. The water settlement is being meted out among the most impacted residents, especially children. 80% is for children, but there's hundreds and thousands of children who don't have the documentation, and they will be ineligible to be compensated for this. So we're continued, the final provisions of the settlement will not be done until July. Is when the judge will issue her final. But at the same time, we've been battling and hammering, and I think Naira mentioned a letter a coalition of groups have signed on to, and it explains in there some of the problems with the water settlement. And just one last thing, knowing that we was not gonna get made whole or anywhere close to it through the settlement is why we have to take up the fight on our own to get what we need. And the fact that, and this may be of some use to others, but this latest COVID relief package that President Biden signed, there's millions and millions of dollars coming into local communities and school districts. And our thing is, you're gonna use that money to resolve what the settlement failed to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire. One of the other things that I think about the neuropsych evaluation, at the end of December 2020, there were 2,700 applications. At the end of December, there were only 29 tests completed. 29 tests that were completed. And my grandson, we applied for the test last February. Some of the people just found out at the end of December or January of 221. So those were new people. That wasn't even including the 2,700 that have already applied for it. Another thing is that someone asked how much were the attorneys getting. A third is $200 million out of the 600 million. So a third. And these attorneys, when it's all said and done, where are they gonna be at? They said they came to help. They didn't come to help the people. They came to rake the people over as always, as they have always
And
done.
get their money.
And so they don't care. And so we have to be mindful. Another thing, we ask as the community, as the grassroots organization, to get an extension to opt in or opt out. The judge would not give an extension. She would not give an extension. So when we think about what's going on and how we are being mistreated, misused, and abused, and like Reverend Pigney said, like Gracie said, how the communities work together, the grassroots organization. It wasn't that the governor wanted to make water available for everybody last year, but it was the grassroots in Detroit that put a mandate that they turn everybody's water on. And so they did that for Michigan.
Yeah.
Not just Detroit, not just Saginaw, not just Flint, but for Michigan, so that the pandemic would slow down. But what's going to happen when the pandemic is lifted and these high water bills are here? And so we are in a catch-22. And we have to continue to work together. Nair, did you have something to say about the lawsuit? I'm just so upset because we as grassroots organizations in December of 2014, we looked for an attorney to come help us in Flint, Michigan, all over the United States. We didn't just go to Detroit. We didn't just go to Ohio. We didn't just go to Illinois. We went to Florida. We went to California. We went everywhere looking for attorneys. And the case was not big enough. The case was not worth them coming to see about us. But after the work was done, the damage was done, all they had to do was swoop in and settle for a measly $640 million, which is not, and then you're going to take a third of it, but you say you are here for the people. You are a lie and you don't care. And then when it's all said and gone, you will be gone and we will be left holding the bag.
Yeah, I would just say that this is like racial capitalism and disaster capitalism playing out in real time, because this is going to be the model of like other communities facing environmental devastation from corporations or from their or from corporations in collusion with their government. And this is showing that, you know, like poor people don't matter, Black people don't matter, Latino, Latinx, Hispanic people don't matter. Basically, if you're not rich and white and part of the corporate class,
If you white, if you're not rich, you still don't matter.
so
That's the part. It don't matter what color. It's the rich part.
it's
when you
the
look at
corporate
it,
class.
right, when you look at it, you have corporate borrowing from corporate. You have corporates loaning to corporates. Like you say, the Detroit Water and Sewage Department, they have a $500 million plan to fix the infrastructure in the next 5 years, when they're making us pay for that.
And when we look that the emergency manager, it was just put in the cities that were predominantly Black and brown people. There were
Yes.
other cities that had financial problem. There were 11 that we counted up when we were in Supreme
Yes.
Court in Ohio that
Yes.
had a financial problem,
manager.
but they didn't get the emergency manager.
Right.
It was just the cities that had predominantly brown and Black people in it.
Right. In 2011, that's when Rick Snyder put the act in the law. You know, we had all different kind of emergency managers. We had a school emergency manager. I think ours was Robert Bob or something like that. We had the other the emergency manager over the water, that they put him up in the big high-rise hotel that we had to pay for, you know. So we as a whole, and Michigan, because you look at it, you say you have Flint, Benton Harbor, you have Highland Park, you have Detroit. We all as a whole, we are Michigan, and that's our water, and we want what's ours, you know. And then when you look at them trying to privatize it, that's even more crucial.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And you know, one thing.
Gracie, would you answer the question about the low water pressure
Mm.
in Highland Park?
Okay, what's happening is that the pipes, particularly with the pressure, is very low because of the connection between Detroit and the Highland Park systems. They weren't made to go together. So there's low pressure because of that, you know, and so when you take that into account, and then you take into account both systems are old, and they're corroding inside. So that means that the amount of circumference, I guess you call it, is a lot less. So so it's the age, and also the fact that the two systems weren't meant to fit together.
Thank you.
And
We have a question about will there be any criminal charges against Governor Rick Snyder? And I don't want all my Michigan folks to jump up at one time, but I'm just gonna say that he just getting a slap on the wrist. It ain't even
That's
a
the same
slap on
thing I
the
said
wrist.
this morning to myself about it.
But I can't hear you. What you say, girl?
I
Come
said
on.
that's the same thing I said this morning about it when I was thinking about it. He getting a slap on the wrist when
It
everybody
ain't
else
even a
has
slap
took the
on the wrist.
fall. People got years and years, and then what he get? Nothing.
Oh,
He
what was
need to
the
drink some of
fine?
that water from Flint.
What
You can
what
hold
was
him
the
down.
fine? What was the fine?
I
Claire,
forgot what the
Naira,
fine was. I was so angry about him
Reverend
just
Pigney?
getting
It's $1,000, misdemeanor,
$1,000.
maximum $1,000.
It ain't funny, but I'm
Wow.
laughing. I'm laughing because some people's water bill is $1,000
Right.
a month.
And then you have so many people that lost their
We have
lives,
had
their
to
family
suffer.
members from the water, and they had to wait years and years to get compensated. And with a death, money can never replace, you know. So him getting slapped with $1,000, that's like $1 to him.
Hello. There was another question about PA4, and this is for Michigan,
Okay.
because in 2011, Snyder enacted the Public Act 4,
Mhm.
which was the Emergency Manager Act, which
Mhm.
entitled him to take over not only the city and administration, but take over the board and to sell off assets.
Mhm.
And to
Mhm.
sell off assets.
Right.
And we got signatures that were turned in February of 2012. We needed 152,000 signatures. We turned in 215,000 signatures from all over Michigan. And we had to fight. We went to court in March. We went through the tribunal in April. We went to court in May. And then in June, we went to Supreme Court. In July, I was one of the ones that went with the NAACP, and we put all the judges up because we could not talk to the Supreme Court judges. And we said we might not be able to talk to you, and we put their faces on there. And at the end of July, they agreed to put the Public Act 4 on the ballot, so we could vote on it. November 2012, we voted against Public Act 4. In December of 2012, they had a lame duck session and came up with Public Act 436. All they did was tweeted it a little bit. They didn't really change it. They still could sell off our asset. They still could take control of the education, and they could still take control of the administration, the mayor, and the city council. And so we are stuck with this law, and we in 2013, February 2013, asked me, some of the community members in Flint, which I was one of them, and a couple of other cities, we filed a lawsuit against Governor Rick Snyder and the state of Michigan. And so we're waiting to overturn with this lawsuit so that we can get our rights back, so we can get our property back, so we can get our vote back and our voice back. Okay.
Amen.
I have a couple other questions that we want to make sure that we follow up with. One of my questions was with at Highland Park, with the lawsuit that was won, other than supposed to get your water bill, did the people in Highland Park get anything else from winning the lawsuit?
Okay, the when the city residents were overbilled, there were about maybe 2,000 plus homeowners that paid too much money. You know, they paid the water bills, they paid overpaid. You know, what happened was the city didn't know what to charge people because there were no water meters. The Detroit had not put, Highland Park had their own system, right? So they didn't know how to bill. So they did not bill Highland Parkers for a number of years. And so people, they were said to owe a whole lot of money when they really didn't. And that's how, and they were threatened with the amount of money being put on their taxes. And what happened as a result of that, like as part of that settlement, homeowners are going to get credit, not have to pay on water, you know, that they were billed for, and they didn't owe. So, but we really haven't heard anything about when that credit is supposed to start. I thought it was supposed to start immediately after the settlement, but I'm not sure. I know Detroit, I believe, they may refile. That settlement was based too on the lawsuit that Highland Park had against Detroit for overbilling. So
I see the population you said is about 11,000 now. What was it before?
I'm sorry.
The population in Highland Park.
Oh yeah, it's just under 11,000.
And what was it before?
You know, it was I'm not sure. It was probably not that much more. Probably about 12,000 or something like that. But in terms of people who had the homeowners, you know, customers, like the water department right now, they just have about 2,400 residential bills. So, you know, it had to be right around that amount. So anyway.
Thank you. to all of my Michigan family, I have one question, and it's getting close to our time. But to sum it up, what would be your recommendation to the grassroots organizations all over the United States? What could you say to them to encourage them? Since you're up, Gracie, why don't you go ahead?
Well, I know in Highland Park, what we have to do is depend on ourselves, and keep fighting, For instance, Highland Park does not have a distribution system. People donate water to us. The city isn't able to get the water out to the people. So what people do is deliver it to citizens themselves, or particularly people who, there's 2 villages in Highland Park, Parker Village and Avalon Village. And they've taken on quite a role in distributing food and distributing water and things like that, making it available for people in the community to come and get it from them. So what's happening is that people have actually they're doing things that the government, the city government should do, but the city government is not doing it. So grassroots movements are, what has to happen with, in order for us to meet our needs. I mean,
Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say the organization, for instance, okay.
Hi, again, it's Roz. Well, here in Detroit, I think that we're gonna keep fighting, and we're gonna keep pushing for the Clean and Affordable Water Act to get, put on the ballot, and we're gonna keep on supplying each other water, because like she said, that we're doing things that the government should be doing for each other. You say you look out for your neighbor, and your neighbor look out for the next neighbor. So we all look out for each other, which I'll say we looked out for Flint, we looked out for Benton Harbor. I have a little thing going on now where I'm getting bottled water donations for Benton Harbor now. So that's what I would say that we're gonna keep on doing, trying to fight to get our affordable water ability plan set in place so we all can have water and they can never turn off our water again.
Thank you. Claire?
Yes, I just would say that keep building on coalitions and networks like you're doing here with the webinars, and also to do some digging and ask yourself, whatever your water issue is, who benefits? Who benefits from what is being done as it relates to the water? We know in Flint, we know who the bondholders are. JP Morgan, Stidale, Wells Fargo. These people are what hold the bonds and the debt that we pay. People say, well, we're beginning to go from the who's at fault to what's at fault. And the what is this system of privatization that's driving our water bills up. We're trying to do all we can to share as we gain in knowledge through our work. We're beginning to understand that it's not just the mayor and the governor and all that, although we have to hold them accountable. But our water bills are sky high because we're paying bonds and not water.
We're paying back money that the Detroit Water and Sewage Department or whatever you guys is called owe to these corporates.
Absolutely.
That's not right.
And we have found that if we can pay attention to that and make that a part of the narrative, people will know who the real enemies are in your fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Reverend Pigney?
Reverend Pigney, did you fall asleep on us? It's after his bedtime, y'all.
I know, he says that all the time. While we're waiting on Reverend Pigney to speak up, I would say stay united. If it's not but 2 of you, stay united, because together you shall win. And I follow the money trail, like Claire says, that we have to follow the money trail. And what they try to do is divide and conquer. If they find you doing something, they find you working, they're going to try to pull you to their side so they can divide you and get you off their trail to keep from exposing what they're doing, who they're doing it to, who they're trying to tear down and tear up. And so one thing we have said here in Michigan, if we have to go to South Carolina, if we have to go to Benton Harbor, if we have to go to Washington, D.C., wherever we have to go to stand up and fight with those that are struggling, we're willing to do it. We're going to do it so that together we shall win. Reverend Pigney, are you?
Sorry
ahead,
about
baby.
that. And I will say that there's other cities and states that's using the water affordability plan that Detroit designed. Michigan
Wonderful.
designed.
Wonderful, wonderful. Reverend Pigney, you available to make a last comment? All right, I want to turn it back over to Naira. Thank you so much for this privilege of sharing and being a part of making a difference, not only in our city, not only in our state, but in this United States of America, the world we live in. God bless you is my prayer.
Well,
Nair?
thank you. This is a very powerful discussion. We could have even had like one more question if we wanted to, because it's only 9:27. But this was like, I just want to give gratitude to all of the panels and all of the testimony that we heard tonight, and then also like the hope that we're going to overcome all of this. Like, we're going to live in a society that we have affordable water, and we're not going to be exposed to all these toxins, and we're not going to be paying for bond debt. Like, we're going to start actually paying for water. So before I turn it back over to the folks at the People's Tribune, I just want to. Oh,
There was one question, Nair,
Yeah.
and I was going to ask it, where do we go from here? And if everybody would give a 1 minute statement of where we go from here, what is your plans? Where are we going? What are we going to do? What can we do? How can we do it? We have to make plans to move forward. I'm going to start with Claire, because I know that that was our conversation on Sunday. And so, Claire, where do we go from here?
Well, where we're going from here, and we're just going to share our experience, and that is, we know that the city of Flint is getting $99 million from the latest payout with the COVID relief package. We are going to do what we can to seize this opportunity to get some of these things that the emergency manager did to reverse that. And water affordability, and we're going to prohibit water shutoffs in the city of Flint. And when they say, well, that's going to cost, no, you got money, and it's our money. And you're going to use that money. What the water settlement didn't do, with former water funds that went to people in high places, and they used it talking about that was for the water. No, this time we gonna get this money, our money, and use it for our needs.
Say that.
To water.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much. Gracie, where do we go from here?
I think, I know it's important for us in Highland Park to develop the coalitions, because we have, different community groups, working together. And that's, we have to build on that. And what I was going to say before was, like, for instance, when the lights, the Highland Park had their lights, all the residential streets taken, lights, DTE came in and they cut the lights out at the pole because we could not afford to pay DTE. So there was a settlement with the city of Highland Park and DTE where DTE would take the lights and reduce the bill. So one of the groups that I work with, Solidarity, started trying to make try to get the city to let them put up solar lights. So the city would not enter into any kind of agreement. So like different people in the community are actually just installing solar lights, to help light up the residential area. So, we have groups that are working together, to develop power from the bottom. So I think that's important. And I know, we do have to look broader, but we still have to try to build, coalitions and work together in order to strengthen the community.
Thank you, Rosalind.
Yes, well, where Detroiters should go now and where I would take the Detroiters with me to keep on fighting this battle is to get an understanding is why do we have to pay for the infrastructure or the money that the Detroit Water and Sewer Department is borrowing or getting a loan from? Why should we have to pay for that? So we just have to stay up on our money and plus the water affordability plan to get in place. That's what I'm working for and keep moving toward. That's where I'm going. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Reverend Pigney, are you on the line? One thing that I want to say to everyone and to those that are listening to us, that we have to get to the table. That when we have to do our homework and see what's going on, what's available, how do we access the availability of the finances and make sure that, the first money that we went to Washington, D.C. to get the 170 million, they took it and gave it to Snyder to disperse it. Well, that didn't work. It didn't work at first, and it didn't work at the end. We looked at the expenditure, how he spent that money, and they gave folks in lands and they gave folks in other cities money that was supposed to come to here to help to fix the pipes. And so we kept on those that the senators and the state representatives that you're working for us, that you're supposed to be making a difference for us. And just like Claire spoke about that 99 million, we're not going to just let it come in and go anywhere. They trying to put it on the old charter. Nope. That charter wasn't even activated.
So basically you saying keep your eyes on the money.
When we had the water crisis. So keep your eyes and make sure you have an input. Make sure you have a voice. Make sure that if it's not but two of you, stand up and speak and demand accountability and demand responsibility. And I'm going to turn it back over to Naira because she keeps putting it in the chat about the resource guide. And I want you to elaborate on that, Naira.
Yeah, so we knew that this is a whole lot of information, right? And this is like a lot of stuff that people, to kind of lean into. And so like if you're watching here on Zoom, it's in the chat. And if you're watching this like on YouTube, shout out to Sylvia Orduno for putting it in the chat over there. And in this resource guide, you have a list of like the call to action, a bunch of articles from the People's Tribune about like the history of what has been happening in these communities that have been taken over and democracy stolen from our communities under the emergency manager law and the water struggles that are happening. Also, a copy of the slides, like resources to a bunch of other things that are happening around the country, and the open letter to that the coalition and Flint sent out to elected officials, And then also for people who are curious in the current state of the criminal charges, a list of those charges and who has been charged so far in the Flint water crisis investigation. But before we end, I know we're a little bit
I want to
over.
say one thing. I want to say
That's
one
okay
thing,
about being a little over.
Nair. I want to say
Yeah.
one other thing. If you don't like who your city council, your mayor, your county commissioner, your supervisors are, change them. When I started in November of 2020, I was elected commissioner because I do know something about water. And I do know that I've been speaking out all the time, but sometimes you need to position yourself to be in that position that you're at the table to make the decision. Because a lot of them that we voted on to make the decision, they're not making the decision. So if you don't like who's there, just like we voted the president out and voted another one in and make them accountable, you need to step up and make a difference. Back
Amen.
to you, Nair.
Most definitely. And I want to invite everyone who's watching this to come back the fourth Thursday in May. That is May 25th, for the next panel in this series, which will focus on other contaminants around, like, coming from water, because we knew that lead was an important issue. I think I did say May 27th. Is that May 27th?
No, you said May 25th.
25th.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't, it was supposed to be May 27th. I'm looking right at this. So I apologize. It is May
For
27th.
everybody. It's
I have a
okay.
whole slide that I had put up just so I made, and I said it wrong on the air. So I apologize for that. But I just want to thank y'all
You're
for
welcome.
joining us on whatever platform that you see this on. Like, even if you didn't watch it live and you're like reviewing this or watching it again, thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for hearing these stories, and carry these stories forward in your own communities, because only together will we win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Naira. I'm Bob Lee with the People's Tribune, for those of you who may not know me. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of the panelists for their wonderful presentations. They were very powerful and very informative. We started this series, came out of a People's Tribune discussion group, which was held on Zoom during the pandemic, with water warriors from around the country who've been fighting for access to clean, safe water, and against shutoffs, and for public control, and who have used the pages of the People's Tribune to get their stories out in their own words. And that water group has included activists and organizations from communities in Michigan, of course, and also Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Jersey, West Virginia, Illinois, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, and California. And as we begin hearing all these reports from around the country, we realize we had to join together and really support one another's struggles. And as we say in the mission statement of the People's Tribune, the paper is devoted to the understanding that an economic system that doesn't take care of the needs of the people must and will be replaced with a system that meets the people's needs. And to that end, we really think of this paper as a tribune of the people and a paper of the movement. And we think of it as offering a platform for the millions of everyday people who are fighting to survive in an America in crisis. And we're trying to help build connections among these fighters, and the awareness that together we can create a whole new society and a whole new world. And I really appreciate the positive comments that have been made about the paper, and it's people like you who are fighting around every day around the country to try and get the government to respect democracy and to take care of the people's needs, who actually contribute the bulk of the articles that appear in the paper. And we're entirely dependent on our readers for donations to the paper and for contributing articles and information and photographs and so on from around the country. And so with that, I'll just turn it over to Sandy. Sandy, did you have anything you wanted to add? Sandy, you're muted.
No, I think it's been said. I would just say also thank the panelists. Really great discussion, and luckily it is recorded. It will be on YouTube, and we really encourage you to share it. We'll be sending out the link. We really, like everyone has said, we want to bring people together, help bring people together across this country to fight this stuff and help one another. So we hope to see you next month. And if you have any ideas on panels that you think we should have, just let us know, and be sure and send any stories that you have. We will print them. And thank you so much for coming, everybody.
And you are so welcome for having us.
I have one final word. I'm on mute. I have one final word. I want each and every one that are here tonight that will watch this, that you are a part of a puzzle. You hold a piece of the puzzle in your hand. And in order for the picture to be complete, we need to join our puzzle parts together because we want to see the finished product. We want to see the whole picture. So you are so important, each and every one of you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.